How you doing, people? Welcome back to the channel. Glad to see you've come back yet again. This one is going to be a follow-up to the part 1 I did regarding myths. I still, after nearly 5 years of being a pusher for EVs, it sounds druggy that, doesn't it, when I say pusher? I still find that people don't get the whole concept. Some do, but come up with the very, very weak excuses of why they would never have an EV. It's still unbelievable what I see, what I hear, and what's stated to me from certain people on Facebook and especially TikTok. Now, I use TikTok. I'll be the first to admit to that. Hello, I do. But I will also say I only use it to progress forward my YouTube channel. What I've come across is so much ignorance on TikTok. Young lads, and I'm going to call them young, of 18 to 30 who have a diesel BMW or a very slow old V8 car. The second circle of people I come across are the elderly. Now, look, I'm no young spring chicken anymore, you know what I'm saying? Now, I know my subscriber base, and hello, and I thank you for this, is mainly more elderly gentlemen. I don't know if it's because I'm similar in age or because they relate to me more or whatever. I don't really care, but I'm really glad you subscribed. So this part 2 is going to be based on what I get back from those two circles of people. After 45 years of V8 muscle cars, powerful cars, classic cars like 3-litre GT XLR Capris in the UK, 66 Mustangs, 2015 GT Mustangs, 3 or 4 6.2 SS Camaros, and on and on and on. Trust me, lads, and a few girls, I know what I'm talking about here. This dislike thing you've got about EVs is astounding and very, very misinformed. So these myths come from that kind of section of folk and drivers and owners. So I'm going to put a few more to bed on this video or post. Let's get on with this. Part 2. The grid will not and cannot cope. The grid can cope. If you ask anybody, any of the executives that work for the grid, I'm just going to call it the grid because there's 2 or 3 organisations that control it, look after it, put into it, blah, 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 feed it, you name it. And I'm not going into massive details on that. What I will say is that you ask any executive, could it cope 20% more electric cars tomorrow? They say, yes, of course it can, even at what it is today. This report is a good read from the National Grid. Although it was the 1st of December 2020, so it's getting on a bit now, it does make a lot of sense. So Google it, National Grid. And I know for sure most states in the USA would be exactly the same. Not a problem. Norway's proven this. Norway has proven with all the electric cars it's got on its roads, their grid copes happily. Let's just turn this back round again as well, because I do get this coal thing shoved in my face as well with the National Grid. Oh, but you're running your electric car on coal. Now, I have no idea who this lady is, but she obviously knows nothing about the grid. Where have you been? It's 2023. It is less than 1% coal onto the National Grid now. No coal, no oil, 51% renewables. Brilliant. There's quite a few big institutions looking at this now to go forward with battery storage. And this will help the grid as we progress and go forward. And so will more renewables and more sustainable energy, basically. ICE drivers seem to think that as EV drivers, we all charge at the same time. We all get home from work at 5:30 and we all plug in. Don't panic, don't worry, don't come up with the excuse that the grid won't cope. It will. The grid is growing yearly in percentage terms, okay? It's getting bigger, more powerful, more stabilised, more battery backup, and the future looks very, very bright for supply of electricity in this country. So take the notice of anybody that says the grid can't cope. It can, and it will, and it does. In the summer, I'm going to roast because I can't have my air conditioning on because it's going to flatten my battery. And I'm going to come to stop and pull in on the motorway and on the freeway because it's so hot. I've been running my air conditioning. It's depleted my battery. I've had to pull in. I'm out of juice. When is that ever going to happen? When does turning my aircon take me completely down to zero on my very large 60 kilowatt hour battery pack in my Tesla. So yes, air conditioning on my car works through the heat pump system. The heat pump system on a modern Tesla is one of the best in the world. Can I just say that? So if I put my aircon on, it hardly affects the main battery underneath. It's super minimal because the heat pump is doing the work. Some of the older EVs, yes, you used to turn your heating on, you could see the numbers go down on the dial, but not with mine, not with any Tesla now. And most modern EVs, in fact, all modern EVs, I'm going to put it out there, surely to God I've got heat pumps by now. My brain's ticking. Anyway, by putting my AC on, I'm not going to come to a dead stop because I'm depleting my battery pack. It doesn't work like that. I've not got much more to say about that apart from two words, and that's heat pump. I'm going to leave it at that. Now, in that first one I did, before I come to number 3, in that first part 1, I did laugh a bit too much, but sometimes you just have to release that pressure. So I'm going to keep it nice and straight on this one. I'm not going to laugh at people because they don't deserve to be laughed at. It's just the education that they need regarding EVs in general. So number 3, you will die in a snowstorm if you get stuck in traffic. Very, very similar, this one, to number 2. My car has an heat pump. It's a heat pump.
Tesla heat pump is about changing all those notions and making an EV for all kinds of weather.
The biggest innovation definitely for our team is the heat pump system.
The easiest way to think about a heat pump is like an air conditioner in reverse.
An air conditioning system takes heat out of your house and pumps it to the outside environment, which is hotter. A heat pump harvesting heat when it's cold outside and pushing it into the cabin of the car.
You know, the basis of it is just around like using the energy you have to make the vehicle more efficient.
It works together to pick the source that makes sense given the conditions that you're in.
It uses that heat pump, turns cold into hot, hot into cold. That's what a heat pump does. So no, I won't die in a snowstorm. In fact, my car has heated steering wheel. Presettable. 2 or 3 different heat settings. My seats, both sides and rear, have heated seats. 1, 2 and 3 settings. Just those on alone would keep me alive in a snowstorm in sub-10, minus 10 degrees C conditions. Now, how long I can stay in that traffic for depends on what I've got in the battery. Just the same as your ice car. Because you're running your ice car on tick over and probably just revving it up now and again to keep it hot. Here's a little point that no one ever talks about on forums, and that's carbon monoxide poisoning. If you read that there, it tells you, don't get stuck in snow with your exhaust in it. It'll block it. Your heater set on full, max out, oh, you like this at the blower, but your fuel gauge is going down, down, down. And if you're running a V8 or a V6 or some form of gas guzzler, wow, even on tick over, you ain't gonna last very long. Now, if I've got a 60 kilowatt an hour battery pack in my Tesla and I've thought, right, I'm going out now, I know it's snow, I'll just charge it up at home, and I'm leaving with, say, 55 kilowatt of battery pack power. I hit this so-called snowstorm 10 miles down the road and I come to an abrupt stop. I've got 50 kilowatt of power in my battery. I could run that Tesla with the heater on at a nice steady 68 degrees, have my heated seats on and my steering wheel, and I could sit in that for probably 3 days. 3 whole days, people. How many times do you know anyone to be stuck in a snowstorm more than 2 days? It's virtually unheard of. EV drivers have got a lot of common sense and they know if it's going to be stormy, know it's going to be snowy, they'll go out with a full charge. So let's have things in perspective here. Don't come up with these BS stories about me dying in snow driving my EV. It ain't going to happen. Let's move on. Number 4. All EV batteries end up in landfill. Show me these massive big landfill sites with all these batteries in them. I can't come across one in the UK. I can't find one landfill full of lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper batteries. Can't find them anywhere. But everyone seems to think that they're going to end up in a landfill, or there's loads now in landfill. Well, the first Nissan Leaf only came out 12 years ago, okay? A few of them have depleted, degraded, and now are not on the roads. A lot of those batteries have been reconditioned, remanufactured, or they're being used in battery storage, where it's been depleted too much for the car, but still great when you've got 12 of them in a big row, and put all together, there's a huge lot of kilowatt hour battery pack there. That's where they're going. They're not going into a landfill. Nobody can afford to throw away a 40 kilowatt hour battery into a landfill. It's just rubbish. You're better to take that battery, and there are now people who can break that battery down and get the minerals out of it and reuse those precious minerals. Your lithium, your cobalt, your nickel, your copper, and everything else. So no, they are not landing in landfill. Okay, can I just say that? Because there is only a few that's actually degraded. It's very, very rare for an EV battery just to pack up and finish. They degrade super, super slowly. So you know when you're going to get to a point that it's no use to you anymore. And those, like I say, are being used for other things. They're not just took out and chucked into a big hole. There's more chance of your lithium batteries being used in a landfill when you've used them in cameras, laptops, and these mobile phones we use. And when you chuck that mobile phone away, there's your lithium in your landfill. Nothing to do with my EV or John's or Arthur's EV or Susan's. I have spoke about this before on a battery degradation post, which is here. Check that one out. I spoke about my 3 last cars, including this Tesla I've got now, and about its battery and its degradation. Where does the imagination take a lot of ICE drivers to come up with this BS and place it all over TikTok and everywhere else? I just don't get it. Comments below. If you're an ICE driver and you've heard this before and you need to apologise. No. If you're an EV driver and you've come across this before in forums, drop me a comment below. I will reply. I do reply to a lot of comments. So no, batteries don't end up in landfill. Let's move on again. I like this one. EVs catch fire more than any other car. All EVs are death traps. EVs catch fire just as you're going along. EVs catch fire when they're in accidents. I don't, well, I'm going to answer it, but I'm astounded by the ignorance of this subject. This was a graph by an insurance company in the US. Not 100% now, because even these figures took in the Chevy Bolt, and there was a few of those catching fire in the early days when GM had a battery problem. Now that's not happening. So this figure here is even with all the Chevy Bolts that were mentioned. So the actual facts are a bit of a mind boggle. People who say that EVs catch fire far more than fossil cars are actually lying. So there's your facts. Fossil fuel cars are far more dangerous than any EV when it comes to catching fire. Okay, to finish this one off, folks, this is my take on this. I have never seen an EV on fire here in the UK or in the US or wherever. I really 100% do believe that fossil fuel cars are far more dangerous when it comes to catching fire. Just look at the facts, that's all I'm saying, the facts I've given you here. Remember that when people say EVs, in that EV sector is obviously, mopeds, e-bikes, all made from China and India, that, like I've just said, have no battery management system on them, no BMS system to control anything. So you're bound to have these issues with these very cheaply made, mass-produced things with no BMS. The cars are a different thing. Every single car brand you'll see sold in the UK and in the Western world will be 100% checked, 100% safety certified, and totally different from any cheap, nasty India-made or China-made e-bike. So let's put that in perspective. Whereas the Americans, they don't just see EVs and put everything in there, they just put car against car for their statistics. So I hope that helps and clears that up. That's it from me this time round. Hope you enjoyed it, like I say. Please subscribe if you've already not. Where have you been? I say this every time. Come back, watch the next one 3 weeks now before we go over to the States and do a big old 16-day road trip, which is all going to be filmed. So I can't wait for that. So come back sometime, look after yourselves and watch them fires in your fossil cars. See you later.